These people are full of it. They're full of it, and we know it. It's being displayed in full view to us every single day. It's right in front of our faces. This is Slamfire, guys. Real quick, be sure to go to slamfiremedia.com. We have all our episodes posted, links to all our episodes, whether you watch BitChute, YouTube, or Rumble. And if you want to follow us on social media, we are on Gab, and you can follow us at Slamfire Media on Gab. Okay, let's get into this really quick, guys. There's a lot that I kind of want to go through. So I don't really want Slamfire. We don't really want Slamfire to just be like a news reading type of thing. We're gonna continue with what we've kind of done in previous episodes, where we're kind of we basically have an idea and we bring in news articles and evidence and things like that to kind of support that idea, to kind of paint a clearer picture, if that makes sense. So we're gonna continue on. We're gonna pivot from last week's episode, episode 21, where we're kind of continuing on and kind of pushing the reality of the culture war, and kind of not necessarily where we stand, but who we're up against. I guess this would kind of fall under, under that section of the type of people that are against logic and against reason and things like that. And we've kind of had this theme of, there are people that we're just not going to be able to save. There are people who are not going to be able to be converted to be able to just listen to reason, right? Because we had talked about the fact that in order for people to change their mind, or to um, have their mind open to a new idea, they need to be willing to change their mind, right? They need to be willing to have their mind open to new ideas. And there are some people who they will just simply not listen to reason, and there's really nothing we can do about it. But continuing with the idea that there are also people out there who they just simply don't know, right? If you guys are watching Slamfire, you guys are in the know, right? This is a very niche type of, podcast project that we're doing here, and for people to be watching this, they're actively looking for new ideas. They're actively looking for new types of information. And then there's people out there who they would like to, they just don't have access to it. I know myself, I'm still finding new things, new podcasts, new things to listen to, and new ideas, still being exposed to ideas. And a lot of the times it's kind of by luck, right? I'm not necessarily knowing like, oh, I need to know this information, so I'm going to go to this specific website, or this specific podcast, or this specific channel, and they're going to give me that information. I don't know that, right? We don't know what we're going to find, right? That's why we're constantly open to new ideas. But there are people out there that no matter if you bring the information to them, you're not going to do anything for them, right? So what were we talking about? So these people are full of it. The people that I'm referring to has to do with more of like these elites, these people who find themselves in like prestigious positions, whether that be politically or intellectually, whatever. Right, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I do have some videos and some articles that I kind of want to use to kind of back up my arguments, and we'll kind of go through it, but give you a basic idea. So constantly we've been lectured, right, by people who think they know best for us, people who are high positions, right, positions that are supposed to be reserved for people who actually know what they're doing, right? No, they know their craft. So when I was younger, I was very naive, right? I used to think that people who are in high positions got there because they know what they're doing, right? They're masters of their crafts, and whatever they were doing. I mean, it makes sense in other aspects of work, such like the example that is easy for me is like carpentry, right? Someone is not going to keep buying, I'm not going to keep buying a chair from a person who doesn't know how to make a chair, right? I'll leave the person who doesn't know how to make a chair will eventually go out of business, right? Because no one's going to keep buying that chair if the chair is a bad chair, right? It only lasts for a few days. It's like, it's not the right height, stuff like that, right? The business won't survive. They'll go out of business. So this doesn't seem to be the case when it comes to politics or other areas like we were talking about, like academics and basically these so-called intellectuals. So a good example that Thomas Sowell had brought up, I remember when listening to a lot of his videos. I would like to do an episode of just talking about Thomas Sowell and doing some of the key points that he talked about, like very good stuff. And it's awesome because it's just logical ways of thinking. It's very easy to listen to because all he doesn't use real fancy talking points or fancy terminology or anything like that. Like he doesn't sound like an intellectual, but he's very clear in his message. Although he is a very smart man, he is a very intellectual person. He's extremely smart. So back to the point. So Thomas Sowell had the argument that intellectuals, it's very dangerous for intellectuals because they can make all these decisions. They can say, they can give their opinion on this, this, and that, but in the end, they never face a consequence for their mistakes, right? Unlike an engineer, right? If an engineer says like, oh, you need to build this support and then it needs to be propped up by this and this, you need to do it like this. And if it's a bridge, for example, I think that's the example that Thomas Sowell used. If it's a bridge, the engineer will probably suffer the consequences of that, right? Whereas if you have an intellectual and they just have a theory about something and then they end up being wrong about that theory, that intellectual doesn't really face any consequences, right? So an experience that so when it comes to people not really being qualified for their positions, I experience this type of stuff like every day pretty much at work. So I'm a teacher and I hear things that other teachers say. These people are quote unquote educators, right? It Some of the things they say really makes me scratch my head and think about what's going on. Like to give you an idea, any chance that I get, I try to advocate like homeschool your kids, like homeschool your children at least until middle school, right? Maybe when they get into high school, maybe you can get them, into high school, so maybe they can get scholarships if you want them to go to college. But then again, it's like I wouldn't even advocate college, unless they want to do something that requires college. For example, if they want to be a lawyer or a doctor or some sort of physicist or engineer, something like that, I would highly recommend you go to college, obviously, right? Because you're going to get that higher education there. But for the most part, I highly advocate people to homeschool. I know that's something that my wife and I want to do if when we ever have kids, homeschool. So anyway, going back to the teachers, some of these teachers, they say things that it's like, wow, I don't understand how you got a job. I don't understand how you survived an interview. But for the most part, a lot of this has to do with the administration. This is like the higher ups people, like the principals and the deans and all these people that are in higher ups. They kind of have like desk jobs, right? So it's easier for me to talk about education because I have this firsthand experience. So some of the people in administration have like little to no experience in the classroom, but yet they implement policies that they think will benefit the district. They have little to no experience teaching, but they're going to come up with the idea like, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this, and this is going to fix the problems that we have, even though there's really no problems to fix, right? So they try to implement policies, but they actually do nothing except make it harder for teachers to do their job. So, for example, they'll start an initiative, right? They'll say, we want to do an audit. We want to audit the district's culture and climate so that we can provide a safer and more positive environment for the teachers and the students, right? We want to increase inclusivity, right? Whatever that means, right? It can mean anything. So all this sounds fine and good, right? But now teachers have to give up their planning time. They have to attend meetings, right? They have to take extra time out of their day to fill out questionnaires and surveys. So if you guys don't know, planning time is like paramount. Planning is what ultimately determines what your students or what the students are going to be able to understand. How well the students are going to be able to understand the content you're trying to teach them. And planning helps prepare you how you're going to deliver the message so the message becomes a lot clearer for the student, right? If the student doesn't understand the message, then it's kind of a pointless lesson, right? Planning is what makes that possible. So in addition, so on top of that, teachers, they'll have to meet with their managers, right? They'll meet with their department chairs, with their vice principals and things like that. Every teacher pretty much has some sort of manager, right? And they'll come in, they'll have a meeting so that they can confirm, like, oh, can you, give me more info on what you put on this survey, right? Can you give me a little bit more details on what you mean by this and what you mean by that? So in the end, basically, all this happens. Nothing really changes. Why? Because what's there to change, right? Everything is fine. There's nothing wrong with the culture or environment. They use these buzzwords and they make it sound like, oh, we need to do this. This needs to be done because we have a problem with inclusivity and we need to, they're trying to throw all these fancy words in there so that they make it sound all good, that they're achieving uh, uh, that they're solving a very important like culture problem, right? A problem, not culture, what's the word? Like a social problem, like a social justice warrior type virtue or something like that, right? That they're trying to solve this problem. But there's really no problem to begin with. I've never been in all the districts that I've worked in. I've really only worked in three districts, three separate school districts. All the ones that I worked at, we've never discriminated someone because of their race, because of their gender, because of their political beliefs, because of their religious beliefs, for any reason, like because of their socioeconomic status. We take in schools take in all students, like that's the law. So there's really no issue with you know culture or the environment or anything like that. Like everything is fine. So they're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So the only thing that really happens is that the teachers lose their planning time, which ultimately takes away from the student, right? Takes away from their progress. It feels very much the same like in politics. So like look at the law that I think it's a law, right? A mandate or whatever. I don't know what it's called. I want to say it's a law that our former Vice President Biden signed that made lynching illegal. Was lynching legal this whole time? I'd like to pay attention, but could you kill? I like to think I pay attention, but maybe this could have passed me by. Like, could you kill someone and not be convicted of murder so long as you did it by lynching? Like, really? Is that like is that really a problem that's going on? I haven't seen anything on. I watch a lot of videos of like cops interacting with people and shootings and things like that, like cop shooting. Because I find how cops interact with people very interesting because you can learn a lot of things on how to communicate with people. Like where exactly does communication get lost? Does communication get lost? Where exactly did where could you point, like what time in this conversation that these two people were having did it just go wrong, and you can kind of use that to avoid that, right? It's pretty cool. So this is a constant struggle for us people who are paying attention, right? If you guys are watching Slamfire, you guys are paying attention, right? You guys are actively looking for some sort of new information, right? Some sort of insight. You're looking for that next thing that next idea that's gonna take you to that next level of thinking, right? But there's a large majority of people who they'll just give so many passes because they think that there's some people that they have, like, oh, look at the type of prestige or power that they have, right? They have some fancy title, right? They know what they're talking about. They just give them a pass, right? It feels like it feels like a large majority of people, they think we should just follow blindly because, right? Not really a good reason, right? These intellectuals who are on TV, they wouldn't lie to us, right? Look how well they're dressed. They look very professional, right? Look how smart they sound when they talk, right? Don't get me wrong, like credit should be given when credit is due, but on the same token, we need to start calling out people who are full of it, and there are a ton of them, and we're constantly seeing it every day. So the first point that I want to bring up, Tim Pool had did an interview with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think he did several of them. I want to say he did at least two. He did at least two, but I saw the first one that he did, and it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she brought up something very, very interesting about how uh, Congress works, like how they vote at the House and everything like that, and just how things get done, and a lot of bills and a lot of these voting practices, like everything, a lot of stuff gets pushed through like through proxy votes and things like that. So it's very, very weird. It's not like the way that you think. It's you would think that these people are very professional people. These people take their jobs seriously. They were elected by you know other people, so these people should be very aware of the things that they're doing, right? That they're going to be under the microscope. But she like kind of opened my eyes that this is like everywhere. The idea that there are a lot of people who don't know what they're doing and they are in high positions where they shouldn't be making that's very dangerous for these types of people to be making decisions that affect our everyday lives. So I want to play that video though so that you guys can see it. I do have it pulled up. Uh-oh, I'm having issues here. Okay, there we go. There we go. So this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you guys don't know who she is, this episode was aired a while ago, a good while ago, not too long ago, but it doesn't really change the fact. So I want you to listen to how she describes the way Congress does business. So I'm going to mute myself, and you guys can hear this for yourself.
I want everyone to know this, and if you hate me, you still need to know this, okay? So when I got kicked off committees, I was like, all right, I'm brand new here. I want to learn how this place works. And here's what else you need to understand. If you're the minority party, no one in the minority party has control on committees. The majority party has control on committees. So if Democrats are in control, they're controlling the committees and they control what bills are actually voted on. Republicans have no choice. We can't put a bill to the floor unless we have 218 signatures to pull it out, and we don't have 218. So being in the minority, committees are pointless for us. So I got kicked off committees and I was like, okay, big deal. So I go sit on the House floor, just sitting there watching what's happening, because again, I've never been elected. I've never held office. I didn't even go to the local GOP meetings because I thought they were silly and stupid.
Until now, you mean?
Until now. Yeah, and then I go. But here's what happens. So they were debating a bill back and forth, and they're debating it back and forth, and there was someone sitting in Nancy Pelosi's seat, the speaker's chair. Was not Nancy Pelosi. I don't know who it was because they had a mask on, and everybody wears masks, and I was like, okay, I don't know who that is. It was actually a man. So they're debating back and forth, and then the guy up there holding the gavel in the speaker's chair calls for the vote by voice. So the Democrats, there was about 5 of them on their side, and there was about 5 Republicans on our side. The Democrats, it's their bill, so they're like, yay, and they're saying, yay, they want to vote for it. The Republicans on our side, they're used to getting defeated at this point because we're into February, and they go, nay, without enthusiasm. And then all of a sudden, the guy up there, Speaker Mask Face, he gavels it in. The bill has passed. And I was like, I'm sitting here holding my voting card in my hand, and I'm like, I didn't vote. And I was so confused. So I call one of the Republican floor staffers, and I'm like, what just happened? And he goes, ma'am, that's how we pass bills. The bill just passed. And I was like, I said, what are you talking about? There's 435 members of Congress. There's like 10 people that said yay and nay. I didn't even vote. I didn't say anything. There's a machine. So here's what we have. On every other row, there's a little machine. It looks like a credit card machine. And I have an ID card. It looks like a driver's license. As a member of Congress, you put it in there, and there's 3 buttons you can push. You can push green for yes, red for no, and then there's a yellow one that's for present. I don't know why you need present, but whatever. So I didn't get to vote. No one else voted. It was not recorded. So here's what I found out. Most of the bills in Congress are passed with a voice vote, meaning millions and millions and billions of American taxpayer dollars are passed that way.
Remember when they had like that?
So it's crazy. Like, this is Congress. These people are in the big time. Like, they have a lot of responsibility, yet this is how they do business. It reminds me of that movie I just saw recently, The Campaign. It's kind of an old movie. It came out in like 2011 or 2012 with Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis. And I want to say it's like near the end of the movie. I'm not going to spoil it if you guys want to check it out. I think I saw it on HBO Go or HBO Max or something. One of those. I don't remember what it was, but basically in the end, Will Ferrell, he's like saying what he does when he's in Washington, because it's basically about a campaign. You have Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis, and they're both trying to get elected to be like state reps or something like that. And he basically says, "Oh yeah, when I go to Washington, I hardly ever vote. I'm usually like playing games on my phone. I'm on Facebook, or I'm trying to hook up with old girlfriends and stuff like that." And it's like a joke, right? It's like, okay, it's a funny, it's a it's a comedy. This doesn't really happen in real life. But here comes Marjorie Taylor Greene and says like, "Yep, that's what actually happens in real life." There's like over 400 people there's like over 400 people that should be voting on these bills, yet there's only 5 people on one side and 5 people on the other side, and they're all voting like just like, yeah, nah, yeah, okay, it's passed or whatever. And it's like, what's going on? It's insane. So it just kind of you're pulling the curtain back a little bit more, and you're seeing the inner workings of like, yeah, something is going on here, something is not working right. So another point, another example of someone who probably, is not qualified for their job. So Supreme Court nominee, Latashi, what's her name? What's her Jackson something? My goodness, I forgot. I need to look up her name. Let me look up her name. I'm surprised. I'm surprised I didn't look this up earlier. Supreme, because I have a video of Joe Biden nominating, of what he said about who he was going to nominate. But I didn't get her name. Uh, Kentaji Brown. It was Jackson. So Ms. Jackson. So I'm just going to call her Ms. Jackson. I'm not going to say her whole name. So this Jackson lady, where am I? So she's being appointed by Joe Biden, right? Or being nominated by former Vice President Biden, right? So why is she being nominated? Why is she being nominated? I have a video of Biden explaining why she's being nominated.
The person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court.
How do you know that the most qualified person is going to be a black woman? How do you know? If you are actually going to nominate the person who is most qualified for the position, wouldn't you have to interview people? Wouldn't you have to, do a little bit of background, do a little bit of digging into a multitude of nominees, right? How do you know it's going to be a black woman? She simply got nominated because of the color of her skin and of her gender. Now, to give you a little idea, I don't have any videos on this. There's been tons of videos. Just look up Ted Cruz and I want to say it's Tom Cotton. They bring up so much stuff about this lady's actual record when it comes to judging, the way that she has ruled on a lot of court cases. It's crazy. On top of that, she can't define what a woman is. She can't define what a woman is. She was asked by one of the senators if she could define a woman, and her answer was like, "Oh, I cannot because she's not a biologist," or something like that. So she can't define a woman. She's lenient on convicted child pornographers. She's lenient on sentencing these people. So she's like, okay, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but the minimum sentencing was like 90 some months. She would only give them like 60 months or 30 months or something like that, well below the minimum requirement for prison time for child pornography. So how is she the most qualified person for the job if she can't even define what a woman is? So how did she end up being nominated if she's obviously not qualified for the job, right? This is strictly, Joe Biden said it right there, straight up, because it's going to be a black woman. It's going to be a black woman. We literally just saw the video. There's like, he cannot say that, oh, that's not what it is. She just happens to be the most qualified person. Like, no. Had he not said anything, of that it's going to be a black woman, if he said like, we are going to we are going to appoint the most qualified and the most intellectual, or whatever, whatever fancy words you want to put on there. If he said that we're going to do that, that's what we're going to be basing our nomination on, and we'll let you know when we have that list, and then you guys can do that. And then he brought out a black woman or whatever, no one would have been that much of the wiser, right? He had to open his mouth and say that it's going to be a black woman. Right there, everybody kind of just stops paying attention. Everybody who's in the know, who's actually paying attention, just kind of stops listening and thinking like, yeah, this nominee is a sham. It's a sham because Joe Biden said that it's going to be a black woman. And I feel I kind of feel bad for this lady on two sides. Like I don't feel bad, but then I do feel bad. And that the fact that this person worked their whole life, and I don't even think they worked that long. It's a fairly young person. like they only had like 10 years experience in a Supreme Court of like California, something like that. I don't know the facts that much, like to like the T and everything like that, but um, the fact that she's not that experienced when they came out with her record and everything like that, everyone's just like galling over her basically because she's black and she's a woman, and that makes me feel bad for her in the sense it's like this person must not have any shame. This person must be completely blind of reality because she cannot see. I know me personally, I'd be looking and I'd be feeling bad because I didn't get the job because I was good. I didn't get this job because I was actually qualified for the job. I just happened to get the job through basically affirmative action. And that's just sad. That's sad on her end. But that just goes to show you the people that are being put into power are not qualified to be in power. So, who is another person who exposed the fact that a lot of these people are full of garbage? Well, he doesn't expose, but he exposes the fact that these people are full of it. Former Vice President Biden. So, what are some examples that we could just name off the top of our head that shows, that exposes the simple fact that a lot of these people are full of it that we can think of about our former Vice President Biden? Well, just off the top of our head, right? Afghanistan, the open border, the open southern border, our current economic situation, right? You can go on and on and on. So I like these points right here a little bit more because I don't think these things should be forgotten. I know how the way this news cycle works is things just kind of go. They last maybe 2 or 3 days. People talk about them, and then they kind of brush them under the rug, and then they move on to the next thing, right? The next thing that people are talking about, like Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, or like who cares? But they do this thing because they want to get their clicks, right? So I want to bring up those. So Afghanistan, southern border, and like our current economic situation. So let's start with Afghanistan. So literally tons of equipment was left behind. There's a chart. Let's look at this chart really quick. Do I have it up here? Yes, I do. Here we go. So right here, here's this chart that they put out. Now, don't look at the numbers necessarily because I think these are like the total numbers that were used. And in all fairness, a lot of this equipment may not be operational, right? If an assault rifle is not a thing though. That's not. There's no such thing as an assault rifle. So rifles, a lot of these rifles, they may not be functional, right? Maybe that's how many that they had originally sent, like in total, but maybe they're not all functional, right? So these numbers aren't necessarily accurate, but just the idea of the type of equipment that was left behind, because you cannot argue that equipment was not left behind because it was left behind. We saw video, we saw pictures of Taliban walking around with an AR style platform, rifles. The Taliban doesn't use AR style rifles. They use AK-47 type rifles, right? But they were walking around. We saw them. We saw them a lot of wearing like tack gear and stuff like that, like night vision goggles and things like that. So a lot of that stuff still works, but just to be fair, right? Probably not these numbers are not, actually correct, but just the idea. So Humvee 22,000, even if you left 1,000 Humvees, that's still a lot of Humvees, right? Even if you only left a fraction of this, right? If you left 10,000 I want to call them assault rifles too. They almost got me. So even if you left 10,000 rifles, that's still a lot of rifles. Communication equipment, trucks, SUVs. Even if you left a fraction of this stuff there, that's crazy. So same thing. Helicopters. I know that was one that they brought up a lot, and we saw videos of people flying around in Black Hawk helicopters. So 33 Black Hawk helicopters. That's a lot, right? So granted, again, maybe not all of them are operational. I understand. I know a talking point, and it's kind of true. I have a buddy of mine who was in the Air Force. He actually got out, but when he was in the Air Force, he was actually a mechanic who worked on helicopters. He worked in a hangar, and he worked on helicopters specifically for the most part. But he also did a lot of work with larger aircrafts. I know he had a big project one time where he installed a large gun onto one of the gunships that they had there and things like that. So he was around the hangar and did a lot of things related to aviation, but he mostly worked with helicopters. And from what he told me is that helicopters require a lot of maintenance. Like it's not just a lot of like physical maintenance, like making sure there's proper, lube and all the different parts of the helicopter itself, whatever it is, whether it's a like an attack helicopter or like a transport helicopter, making it has like specific protocols they need to follow to make sure everything is up to code and everything like that, like pre-flight stuff. Like there's a lot of things that go into it. So it's not just that thing, it's also like software. Like software needs to be updated and make sure it's maintained and everything like that. And there's a lot that goes into it. So 33 is kind of a big number. But even then, say it's a fraction of that. What if they just left 2 or 3 that are functioning? That's still a lot of money. I don't even know how much these things cost, but I'm pretty sure it's a lot of money, right? And you have a couple of them, like 3, 4, 5 of them that are functional that you can sell to someone and they can, do whatever they want with it, and you're basically funding the Taliban, right? So again, this is an idea of the type of equipment we left back there in Afghanistan when we surrendered Afghanistan. So not to mention that, like, we can't be sure of these numbers, but just an idea. So it was completely botched. Like this is just proof that the people who organized this, that they were not prepared. So even the famous picture that we've seen, I'm not going to show it, but the famous picture of, people literally hanging off the side of airplanes, trying to get out of the country, right? They're hanging for their dear lives on these carrier planes trying to get out, right? And to add further insult, Biden goes on TV and he complains, "Oh, you're still bringing that up? That was like 4 days ago." Like he complaining about us, about people fighting, trying to escape, trying to run for their lives and complaining about it. There was also like innocent civilians killed, like they did drone strikes, and there's no accountability for the people who approved these strikes. Had the withdrawn gone correctly, had Biden been a serious president, had former Vice President Biden been a serious president and actually put actual legit attention, like if he actually knew how to do it, if he was actually qualified for his job, there would have been no need for these drone strikes. The Taliban would have stayed back while we did our thing. We needed to get everybody out, get all our equipment out, get all of our civilians, get everybody who helped us, because I guarantee you that the people that are still left behind, they're being hunted, right? Because they helped us. They helped the United States. They're actively being hunted. So moving on from that, the southern border is open. It's open for business. I read an article the other day too. I want to say it's May 24th. Biden's going to be removing one of, oh man, I forgot what it was called. I want to say it was Title 9, but that doesn't make, Title 9 is something else. But it's basically a policy that made it so that we don't have to deport people right away. Like I forgot what it was. Now it's bothering me. I want to look it up now. Oh my goodness. I want to look it up right here. I want to look it up right quick. See if I can find it. Joe Biden southern border policy. I want to look this up really quick because it has to do Title 42. That was close. He's going to end the Title 42 policy. So just to give you an idea of what Title 42 is, Title 42. Oh man.
Probably in the next 2 or 3 days, we'll hit over 1 million encounters or apprehensions.
Okay, this is like a mess here. Okay, here we go. Let me do this, and then I go over here. What's going on? I'm trying to get this article here so that we can see. It's not letting me. Man, let me see. Title 42. Let's get a different article then. Tell us what Title 42 is. So what is Title 42? So Title 42 is a public health authority that gives federal health officials power during the pandemic to take extraordinary measures to limit the introduction of communicable diseases. So basically, it limits the amount of people that can come into the country. So him getting rid of Title 42, it's just going to be a flood of people coming in because now there's no limits, right? There's nothing holding them back. So he's going to open up the floodgates. I want to say it's May 24th. That's when Title 42 is basically going to end. So so far there have been millions of people that have already crossed the border since this administration has been in the White House. So there's a chart here, right here. This is from pewresearch.org. So just looking at these charts right here. So this is 2020 right here, huge spike. Oh wait, 20, yeah. In 2000 there was a big spike, but an even bigger spike in 2020. What happened in 2020? Joe Biden got quote unquote elected, right? This was another one that I found was interesting right here. So the border encounters with single adults, families, and unaccompanied children. So the big talking point that they had for a while was they were saying like, oh, it's just families. People are looking for a better life, right? They're trying to improve their economic. They're just regular everyday people, right? That they're not criminals or nothing like that. So they're just families. The majority of people that are crossing the border are single adults. Over 1 million that have crossed illegally have been single adults. And I'm pretty sure that it's males. They don't put it on here, but I'm pretty sure it's males. Family units have been 400,000, 450,000, and unaccompanied children 144,000. Migrant encounters more than doubled in every sector along the U.S.-Mexico border in fiscal year 2021. So our border is pretty much open, and it's going to be even more open come May 24th. I want to say it's May 24th. You guys can fact check me on that, but in May, Biden's going to end Title 42. The administration is going to end Title 42, and it's going to just get even that much more worse. So these people have no idea what they're doing when it comes to our southern border, right? So last thing, our current economic situation. So we all know the basic facts, right? So when Biden first went into office, he shut down the XL pipeline. He removed a lot of the policies that the Trump administration had. They had put in place to make America, like to kind of put America on the path of being self-reliant, right? So that we don't have to depend so much on foreign oil, on things like that, right? We can kind of just rely on local, right? A lot of, I want to say tariffs, but I don't think that's tariffs. A lot of sanctions isn't the right word. I think it was tariffs, right? He put a lot of taxes on people he basically wanted to incentivize people to do business here in the United States, right? And a lot of people, they don't understand the point, right? A lot of people don't understand about this pipeline issue. They kind of just glaze over it. And one of the arguments that I heard Jen Psaki or one of them trying to peddle was that it's the oil companies. The oil companies are being greedy. And that's the only counter argument that I've heard that kind of makes sense. That's a possibility. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's true though. So oil production is not like a switch. It's not like a light switch. Like you just flip it and boom, like oil starts flowing. That's not how it works. So the leases to these oil projects, like they're big projects. Like it takes an enormous amount of man hours just to develop something that's going to be a prospect. They don't know if it's going to produce anything. So it takes a huge investment. So with investments, you need investors, right? So when former Vice President Biden announced his plan that he announced that when he signed his executive orders during his first day in office, what he was going to do, right? Shut off all these pipelines and no more drilling, no more fracking, all of this stuff. All these investors, they pulled their money out and put it into other things like renewables or gas or, whatever was going to make them money, right? So all the new projects were basically dumped and ignored because they knew they wouldn't be able to develop these leases, right? They would just be sitting on the money and it would just be wasted. They're not going to invest in something that isn't going to produce, right? So the current economic crash, everything that's going on right now is totally on this current administration. It's totally on Biden. Why is it that we are so reliant on other countries for like the things that we require for our country to function, like oil, fertilizers, and rare earth minerals? Like why are these people so insistent that we get everything from China, we get everything from Russia, we get everything from all these other, from Taiwan? Like why are Democrats so what's the word I'm thinking of they're so adamant on us getting everything from foreign competitors? Why don't we just do everything at home? Like with Trump, we were exporting oil. So we know it's possible. We know that the United States is capable of being self-reliant while still being able to contend with the world market. But this whole situation, like I don't want to go off to too much into a tangent, but this whole situation just shows the incompetency of this administration. They don't know what they're doing, right? So circling back, tying everything all together. They want to make us feel like we're stupid, right? Like we possibly couldn't understand what's going on because there's no point explaining it to you. You just don't understand, right? But don't worry. We'll do it for your own good. Don't worry. This is for your best interest, right? That's how they try to frame it. But it's amazing how they try to belittle you, like with these snarky remarks, like this is all a strategy, right? They want you to think that they know what they're talking about so that you don't say anything because you're just going to look like you're stupid, right? And no one wants to look stupid, so you kind of just, take it at face value. And that's what a lot of them bank on. Like people have a general fear of looking stupid, right? And this kind of brings up a thing that I saw Steven Crowder do. He recently did a Change My Mind, which is it was okay, it was whatever. But anyway, the something about different genders participating in sports, that something like only men should compete with men and women should compete with women, and it had to do with that whole NCAA swimming dude, that Leah Thomas dude or whatever, getting first place in the NCAA tournament, whatever it was. So anyway, Steven Crowder is doing his Change My Mind, and some fancy pants college degree writer guy sits down with him. I forgot what he wrote for, what publication he wrote for, but he was like a scholarly dude. He was like a writer guy. He had a fedora and everything, so he knows what he's talking about. So he sits down and he gets completely shut down with like simple logic and facts. Like he tried to bully Crowder. You can kind of tell he tried to bully him with misinformation and just throw stuff in his face. But because Crowder, he was very aware. Like he knew the articles that he was bringing up. He knew the information. So when he asked him to justify your position, defend your position, he couldn't. He would try to change the topic, right? Because remember, this guy is a writer. He writes articles for a living. He's supposed to be a journalist, but when someone holds him to account, he can't stand up to real life counter arguments. The only way he can get his illogical point across is when he can't be challenged, right? When he writes an article and there's no one there to tell him yeah, you're wrong. That doesn't make sense, right? So all this works in tandem with our responsibilities, though, right? It's not only your responsibility to protect our physical selves, right? We've had that conversation before, but it's our responsibility to kind of protect our minds as well, right? The way that we can defend ourselves is by using logic and asking questions. And that's what these people don't want. If these people cannot convey their position in a way that we can reasonably understand it, is it really a good idea worth supporting? Probably not, right? That's usually the litmus test that I use, right? If you can't defend your argument when someone is just bringing you facts and logic, then it probably doesn't have much merit. Right? We can talk about it. I don't mind talking about crazy ideas and stuff like that, but strictly for entertainment purposes. It's not something that we should really take to heart. So that's what I kind of want to leave you guys with. I don't want to go off into too much tangents, just kind of give you the bulk of it, that there are a lot of people who feel that they are in a certain position because they've earned that position, because they went to school or they studied, they went to a certain school, they went to Harvard, or they have a fancy degree in whatever, right? Some fancy, the one that a lot of people thought was really oh man, they have a degree, and then you ask them what's their degree in, oh, it's in multidisciplinary studies. It's oh wow, that sounds fancy. It's no, that's basically you have credits in a bunch of different subjects, so they just lump them all together and give you a degree. you you don't have anything, like you don't know anything special, because that's a degree that a lot of people try to put onto me. And quick story, I don't want to go off in too much of a tangent, kind of over with the main idea of the podcast. I'm just kind of rambling now, but um, when I was in college, my wife and I weren't married yet. My wife had gotten very sick, and it bothered me because we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have, we both worked a job, and it was like just below full. No, it was a full time. Yeah, it was a full time job, but we were only getting paid like $7.25 an hour, $7.50 an hour, something like that. So we didn't have a lot of money. We definitely didn't have money saved up, and my wife ended up having to go to the hospital. So I was so bothered by it. It's like, man, we're here working hard, and I can't even afford, to pay this hospital bill. I'm gonna have to figure out a payment plan or something like that. But that was bothering me. So I thought, like, I'm just gonna go into the military. Like, I'm gonna quit school and I need to start making money now. I need to be able to put us in a house and everything like that, because like we can't afford, we can't be living like this anymore. I'm tired of this. So I went to my academic advisor and I said, hey, I need to graduate now. Like, can you, like, I'm going to enlist in the army. I want to go into the, not the army. I think I was going to go Air Force, because I was thinking like maybe I can become a PJ or something. But I wanted to go in, and I was telling like, I think it'd be best that I get going with the degree, so that increases my chances of becoming an officer. So the degree that they just tried to, pull out of thin air was a degree in multidisciplinary studies. And it's basically like I had a lot of credits from environmental science, I had credits from healthcare, and it wasn't enough to get me a degree in environmental science, and it wasn't enough to get me a degree in healthcare, healthcare service technology. So they basically bunched them together to create a new degree, which is a multidisciplinary study. That doesn't mean I know, I'm an expert in anything. It just means I have a bunch of different credits from different different fields of study that amount to enough that qualify me for a degree. That's basically all it is. And there's a lot of people who think that just because I went to college, or just because of this certain quote unquote prestige, or whatever you want to call it, of a certain title that they have, makes them think, they give them this false illusion that they know what they're doing, that they are masters of their craft, when in reality they are not. That just goes back to it, man. We really need to use our logic, our common sense, and use that as a way to kind of sift through all of this, right? To help navigate this as safely as possible, as logically as possible, right? But that's a problem that we had, right? We had in one of our early episodes that there's a huge chasm between logic and common sense. Common sense doesn't exist as much anymore because there's so few people using logic nowadays. It's amazing. But don't be dissuaded by these people. They are full of it, and I think we should continue. We should keep pressing and keep calling them out on their hypocrisy, calling them out on their gaffes and their mistakes, and be like, hey, you said this, you said that, and you come back and correct it. It's like, well, you correct it, but keep calling them out on it. Keep calling them out on it. Keep pressing on them, and I think this is going to help us kind of pull away in this culture war. It's going to open people's minds up more to be susceptible, to be willing to have their mind changed, willing to hear another perspective. If they don't change their mind, they don't change their mind. Maybe the argument wasn't sound enough, right? But at least it opens up people more to the idea that there is another opinion out there, and I should think about this a little bit more before I, join a side, or before I, sign over all these crazy things that we're just giving away. We're just giving away freedoms for nothing, and it's scary. It's scary. So again, guys, thanks for watching. This has been Slamfire episode 22. We're gonna keep on chugging, man. It's gonna be crazy. We're on episode 22 right now, and I don't see how this is gonna get to episode 100. But I bet you we're gonna look back on episode 100. At least I will, and be like, wow, like this is it. It went by really, really quick. Like, how did I come up with all this stuff to talk about? It's gonna be crazy. But again, guys, go to slamfiremedia.com. We have all our videos uploaded to BitChute, YouTube, and Rumble. Links are there to whichever site you'd like to consume your media, pretty much. And then if you go to Gab, you can follow us at Slamfire Media, where I post up every time we post up new videos. pretty much. I'm not like a person that I just use social media and I do. I mean, maybe later on I will, but we don't even have any followers or anything like that. So it's kind of just there, just so that we have it ready to go, so that if the need ever comes, everything's already set up and it's a smooth transition. Everything's there for you guys. Whatever you guys need, it's good to go. Again, we do want to look into expanding, because I don't know how YouTube's going to work. YouTube is a very hit or miss type of thing, and I'm surprised we haven't been flagged or something with some of the things that we've been saying um, on YouTube to kind of flag us or just get rid of us completely, because we hardly have any viewers on YouTube. We're starting to get a few, but we're not getting any traction or anything like that. So we'd be an easy channel for them to get rid of, because it's like, I'm gonna go complain like, hey, they canceled us on YouTube, and everyone's gonna be like, well, who are you? Like, oh, hi, we do Slamfire at slamfire.com. Like, you haven't. It's like, no one knows who that is. Only like people on BitChute know who Slamfire is. Like, no one knows who you are, so who cares if you're gone? No one's gonna miss you anyway. So I'm surprised that hasn't happened. But we were looking to like, Odyssey is one that a lot of people do, and then a buddy of mine was telling me about Mines and stuff like that. So that'll be something for later on that we'll that we might jump into. But either way, guys, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch our videos and oh, my audio cut out. I don't know what happened. Okay, there we go. Yeah, taking the time to watch our videos and checking us out on BitChute, especially, guys. Really appreciate it. Either way, guys, thanks for tuning in. This has been Slamfire.